Shalom, Israel. Grace and mercy from God, the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, be unto you. All praises to the Most High that we made it another week. Not quite to another Sabbath day. Lord's will, by the end of this class, of this lesson, there, we'll be there, and some of you may already be there, depending on where you're at in the world. But I'm talking about here in the States, in Central Time. We're not quite there yet. Not quite to the Sabbath. Sun hasn't went down yet. And we are in that time of year where it is the latest that it will ever be before the sun goes down here. So it may even be after around 9 when it goes down here. And of course, if you're on the West Coast, it'll be another couple hours. But with all of that, let me check and make sure everything is functioning properly. I do just want to give all praise, honor, and glory to the Heavenly Father. I do so in the name of His only begotten Son, and I do so by His Holy Ghost, without which we would have no understanding of the Word at all. We would not be able to get the sense. But let me just check and see how I'm looking on y'all's end. I appear to be live.
And see.
All right, yeah, audio is good.
On y'all's end.
Audio is fine. All right, praise the Most High. Let me check Facebook. I should be good over there if I'm good on YouTube.
His Holy Ghost, without which we would have no understanding of the Word at all. We would not be able to get the sense.
Yeah, so y'all can hear me just fine. Praise the Most High for that. Let me cut that off, and maybe we'll be all right now. I guess the main thing that happened or is happening today that I'm not going to talk about is Juneteenth. And I talked about it last year with Judge Joe Brown, that clip and how he feels on it. I think it's very, very apt. But I also talked about earlier this week on learning the word lesson concerning Lamentations, about how we forgot prosperity. We think just because chattel slavery isn't happening in the U.S. anymore that we're free. We're not. All right? If you still pay taxes, you are not free. All right? Especially concerning Black, Latino, Native American people. You pay taxes to someone who is not your brother, right? As far as not your people. There's no way in hell you're free. I mean, it is what it is. And I'll show y'all this. I'll go ahead and bring my camera down so y'all can see this. I'll just touch on this briefly, and then we'll get into like the main thing tonight. This is what Christ said in Matthew 17. All right. I was looking for the scripture for a while, but I couldn't find it until here recently. Because I thought it was Luke 17, but then I looked at Luke 17. I'm like, that's not right. This is a bunch of other good stuff, but it's not what I was looking for. All right. In Matthew 17 and the end of the chapter. There's a story here that's not talked about a lot, not talked about in the Christian church. All right. Not even talked about a lot in Israelite circles when it should be. All right. So verse 24, starting with verse 24 here in Matthew 17, it says, "And when they were come to Capernaum, they that received tribute money came to Peter and said, Doth not your master pay tribute? He saith, Yes. And when he was come into the house, Jesus prevented him, saying, What thinkest thou, Simon? Of whom do the kings of the earth take custom or tribute? Of their own children or of strangers?" Right? So, it's important that we see here that, first of all, before they even come to him, and Christ said, render unto Caesar what is Caesar, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and God and what is God's to God, right? That was in Matthew 22. Before then, they come to him looking for taxes. He said, "Hey, does your master pay taxes?" And Peter's like, "Yeah, of course." So Jesus is asking this question to Peter. He said, "What do you think, Peter? Do you think that the people of this world make their own people pay taxes, or they make the other people pay taxes? Do they make, as it says, of their own children or of strangers?" Peter said unto him, "Of strangers." Right? Because you don't make your own people pay taxes. That's never how it's been. If you're free, you don't pay taxes. In other words, of strangers, Jesus saith unto him, then are the children free. He said, look, the strangers pay taxes. The people who are captive to the ones in power, the children, the people who don't pay taxes, they're the ones who are free. Notwithstanding, lest we should offend them, go thou to the sea and cast a hook and take up the fish that first cometh up. And when thou hast opened his mouth, thou shalt find a piece of money. That take and give unto them for me and thee. Right? So Christ is saying, look, we are captives. We are captives under Rome at that time. It was Rome that they had to pay tribute to, they had to pay tax to. All right? He said, okay, yeah, we are. We are into captivity. We'll pay our taxes. Right? So that's not my whole point is not to say you shouldn't pay taxes. My whole point is to say, as long as you do pay taxes, as long as you have to pay taxes, which we do here in America, we're not free. As Christ said here, he said, okay, we're not free. We'll go ahead and pay taxes. So I'm telling you the same thing. We pay taxes. We're not free. This idea that, and I talked about this on learning the word. We was reading the book of Lamentations. We think that just because we don't have chattel slavery, all right, that we're free now. But really, chattel slavery was unique historically in how severe it was, all right? Maybe it was comparable to the Assyrians and what they did, and every place kind of had their own version of slavery, right? Every empire, every country, every nation pretty much had their own version of slavery, right? But mostly, in ancient times, slavery was pretty much the same thing as we have today, which is, hey, you work so you can pay bills, and then the rest of the time, yeah, you get to choose where you work and what you do, but the fact that you have to pay bills, that is the slavery. That is the captivity. As it says here, and I'll go ahead and get this in Baruch 3 and 8, because I referenced it on learning the word. But since Juneteenth is a lie, that's really what it is. It's a lie, because it's called Freedom Day. People are calling it Freedom Day. You're not free. That is the lie. That is the crafty counsel. If you have to pay bills, especially to somebody who is not your people, that is still slavery. That's still captivity. All right. Baruch 3 verse 8. Behold, we are yet this day in our captivity, where thou hast scattered us. Even to this day, we are where God has scattered us by various means. All right. Mostly through ship. That's how everybody got over here to the west, is by ship. They try to act like the natives got over here by land bridge. That's not how it happened. It was through ships. All right. Coming from, they're even talking about, they didn't used to talk about this, but they talk about it now, that there was waves that come by way of the Pacific Ocean, and there were, but mostly it was waves that come by like around the tip of Africa and landing in Brazil. All right, that's the waves that you read about in the scriptures. But anyway, behold, we are yet this day in our captivity, where thou hast scattered us, for a reproach and a curse, and to be subject to payments. Right? So we are yet this day in our captivity, where we've been scattered, check. Where we are subject to payments, check. That means we are under the curses and we're still in captivity. All right? According to all the iniquities of our fathers, which departed from the Lord our God. Hear Israel, the commandments of life, give ear to understand wisdom. All right. So the book of Baruch is very heavy. All right. But the point is that we are yet this day in our captivity because we're subject to payments. And it's the same thing that Christ said. All right. He said the children are free. The strangers are the ones who have to pay custom and tribute. All right. But anyway, that just shows the farce that is Juneteenth. All right. It's a celebration of leaving chattel slavery. All right. But as I talked about last year, Judge Joe Brown talked about how it's really the celebration of the ignorance of Black America. That's really all it is. That's all it is. All right. If you really want to celebrate a day of freedom, a day where God has delivered you from captivity. Celebrate the Passover that comes every spring. That's the true day of deliverance. That's the true freedom day. All right. But anyway, let me go ahead and get to the first lesson, or the first story of the night, I should say. And this one's going to be real quick because the other two is kind of the main. They kind of work together as the main story of the night. But here we have, I do want to pause this video that it has playing. But I do want you to see what this is, because this says, President Donald Trump unveils the new Air Force One, a converted Qatari jet. All right, so this Qatari jet he was given, or he may have been given multiple Qatari jets, but he converted to Air Force One. All right. Like that's the new. I mean, it's just a literal bribe. I mean, that's really all it is. But is in Maryland. AP, it says, President Donald Trump on Friday showed off the new Air Force One, a formerly Qatari-owned jumbo jet that has been converted into the official U.S. presidential aircraft. The new aircraft eschews the Kennedy-era robin's egg blue exterior of the old plane for a bolder look, with the underbelly of the plane painted navy blue with a red stripe above it. The plane's left side, where the president boards, features the presidential seal, while the tail of the aircraft has a massive American flag on it. This plane, and there's a better picture of it down here, I guess. I wouldn't even necessarily say it's a better picture, but it's just another angle. All right. It says this plane was transformed into a flying White House at a level of luxury that nobody has ever seen before, Trump said from inside the massive Joint Base Andrews hangar. I guess I'll read the sentence before I go off on a tangent again. As a couple hundred assembled Air Force personnel looked on, he spoke after stepping off the new plane in a dramatic flourish as his signature tune, God Bless the USA, played. Right, so he said it's a level of luxury that nobody's ever seen before. I know that's like Trump's style. That's his signature style, is this whole like gilded persona and whatnot. Everything's got to be gilded. Everything's got to be luxurious. But like that's not what the president's supposed to be. And I know I'm sounding like a nerd, or like a purist or whatever. Like, but I don't know. Generally speaking, at least in times past, the president was somebody who was basically like the top politician, right? Like the head bureaucrat. You know what I mean? He wasn't like this flashy king of the world type, situation like Trump is. But, at least overtly. They were kind of behind closed doors as far as like the leader of the American empire and whatnot. But, Trump is just taking that to a whole nother level. I always say this. He's the embodiment of Esau. And that's, the pride and the arrogancy and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, he confirmed that he would be taking the new jet to the NATO summit in Ankara, Turkey, next month, and indicated he would be returning to China at some point, presumably a reference to the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit that China is hosting in November. His return from the Group of Seven summit in France this week, the G7 summit, was the last planned trip aboard the old Air Force One, he said. The G7 summit, we're not exactly going to get into that. We may reference it in this other article over here. Basically, announcing that Iran won the war, but it is what it is. Now, when we land at airports in London and in Germany and different places, nobody tops this one. That's the way we have to have it for our country. Trump said, noting that the colors and the design were to my taste, I will say. Yeah, I would say so as well. That's literally what I just said. It's to his taste. He added that the new Air Force One will do a flyover during the July 4th celebrations next month. The gift from Qatar is serving as a bridge aircraft to carry the president until the new planes ordered directly from Boeing arrive. That is currently slated for 2028. So not only has he got this new plane, he's going to get a new plane. That's actually pretty funny. All right. This is the front side of the plane. Let's see. The administration formally accepted a luxury Boeing 747 jet from Qatar, or Qatar, some people say, last year to be used as the presidential airplane, despite questions about the ethics and legality of accepting such an expensive gift from a foreign government. Y'all keep that word in mind. Gift. Trump has insisted in the past that he would not fly around in the Qatari jet once he leaves office, and said it would instead be donated to a future presidential library, his presidential library. And the presidential library has long such, for every president, been used as like, okay, well, this is how we legally skirt around bribes, right? Is somebody just so happens to donate to the presidential library, of whether it be like Clinton or Bush or Obama. Trump on Friday said the U.S. was in a little bit of a logjam as they awaited the delivery of the new jets directly from Boeing, which had originally been scheduled for 2024 but had been delayed. He recalled asking the Emir of Qatar for use of one of their planes. See, a normal president wouldn't do this. A normal president wants to stay away from aircraft, Trump said Friday, but our country has to be represented properly. I don't know what he means by stay away from aircraft, but he's right. A normal president wouldn't do this. That's kind of my whole thought as well. The Air Force said in a news release Friday that any plane deemed Air Force One must meet rigorous security requirements, and that the Qatari plane was modified under a disciplined engineering approach that prioritized these exact core capabilities above all else. Yeah, I don't necessarily doubt that it's kind of like decked out security-wise, though they may have cut corners on that as well. The Air Force also said much of the previous head of state interior layout of the plane was kept intact. The Air Force has said in the past that security modifications to the jet would cost less than $400 million. Still a lot of money. Trump's efforts to reimagine the presidential airplane date back to his first administration, when he directed that an incoming fleet of new jets would adopt a color scheme that was nearly identical to that of his personal airplane. Then President Joe Biden reversed the decision in March 2023 as an Air Force review suggested that the darker colors could increase costs and delay delivery of the new jets, but once Trump returned to office, he returned to his desired colors for the plane. Other government jets that carry other top administration officials will also use the similar red, white, and navy color scheme, the Air Force said earlier this year. An Air Force spokesperson who spoke on condition of anonymity to discuss sensitive plans told the Associated Press that the two current planes, known as VC-25As, will not be retiring. Instead, they will remain in the fleet until the new Boeing planes, referred to as VC-25Bs, come into service, the spokesperson said. It is unclear how the older jets will be used, but the spokesperson said that both the Qatari jet as well as the VC-25As will be available for use, and the Presidential Airlift Group will select the appropriate aircraft for each mission based on operational requirements. All right. So, just simply told, the Qatari jet, and I guess that article didn't really make it clear whether or not this was the Qatari jet that was, I think it did say it was the one that was given to the presidential library, or maybe there was another one that was given to the presidential library. It didn't make that abundantly clear, at least I don't think so, but it's clear that this is a bribe. Like that's what it is. And like even like when it comes to like Trump coin, and you have like, as soon as he got into office, you had the Saudis dump a bunch of money into the Trump coin. Like he's been getting bribes like all over. Like that's all this is really. Had Qatar or Qatar building a military base like in the states. I think it was in Iowa. It could have been Idaho. In one of those states, I think though. It's just bribes. That's all it is. All right. And like I said, presidents in the past have done it, but Trump is just kind of the embodiment and the escalation of all that, you know. But let's just take it from the top as far as like taking it from the law in Exodus 23. It says, and thou shalt, this is 23 and verse 8, Exodus 23 and verse 8, and thou shalt take no gift For the gift blindeth the wise and perverteth the words of the righteous. Right? So even if you were trying to be righteous, if you take a gift or a bribe, this gift right here translates to bribe. All right? It would blind the wise and pervert the righteous. All right? So he said, so the Most High said, if you're in a place of judgment, just don't take no gifts. All right? Just don't take no bribes. All right? Because any gift you get will be turned into a bribe. Let's get this here in Ecclesiastes. In Ecclesiastes 7. Here it is. Ecclesiastes 7:7, I believe it is. Could be mistaken, but on the same tip as like the gift blinding the wise, all right? It's like even if you try to be wise, if you accept these gifts, if you accept these bribes, then it will blind you. It will make you, or it'll pervert the righteous, as it said in the other verse, all right? And here in Ecclesiastes 7 and verse 7, it says, surely oppression maketh a wise man mad, and a gift destroyeth the heart. Right? So any kind of bribe, any kind of gift destroys your mind. Right? Because it's not saying it'll cause you to have a heart attack, but it will pervert your judgment. It will pervert your mind. All right? And keep this in mind, that surely oppression maketh a wise man mad. All right? As another scripture say, be angry and sin not. All right? So any kind of oppression you see will piss you off. All right? And yes, mad can also mean going crazy. All right? But the reason why those two words are linked, right? Going mad, as in going crazy, and being angry, is because if you get angry enough, you start to go crazy, right? But on the same tip of like oppression making a wise man mad, and the judgment being perverted based on the receiving of bribes, all right? Let's get this here in Leviticus 19, toward the end of the chapter. All right, so what is this, 35? Leviticus 19:35, it says, ye shall do no unrighteousness in judgment, in meat yard, in weight, or in measure, right? False balance, all right? Shall not lean to one side more than the other, all right? Give a just judgment. Be no hypocrite in judgment. It says, just balances, just weights, a just ephah, and a just hin shall ye have, right? Don't try to screw anybody over when it comes to your judgment. I am the Lord your God, which brought you out of the land of Egypt. Therefore shall you observe all my statutes and all my judgments, and do them. I am the Lord, right? So be just in judgment, all right? Don't be taking gifts, don't be taking bribes so that you can pervert judgment. Be just in your judgment. All right, so I'll get this here in Proverbs, and I'll start with Proverbs 11, then we'll come back to that after we talk about some more things in the news. But in the same tip as we've been following here as far as the unjust judgment, all right, in Proverbs 11. And like I said, that's been an issue in America for a long time, right? Money in politics for a long, long time. But the current administration is just the escalation of that, right? And the overt and the very, very obvious tactics being shown and being put on display, all right? So I'll start with verse 1 here in Proverbs 11. It says, a false balance is abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. All right, so a false balance, leaning to one side over the other. Because it's been said for a long time that America is like the world police, right? So if you're actually going to be that, then do righteousness, right? Show just judgment in that. But America has not done that. America has never done that. All right. But it said a just weight is his delight. All right. I'll keep reading. It says, when pride cometh, when pride cometh, then cometh shame, right? And everybody knows the song Proud to Be an American, right? Or at least I know I'm free, right? I just talked about how that's a lie, the freedom part. But the Most High said if your pride gets in the way, if you're proud of anything, then cometh shame. People try to make exceptions of that. Well, no, I can be proud of this or that. That's not what the Most High says. When he ever say to have pride? He never said it was all right for us to have pride in anything. All right, he said when pride cometh, then cometh shame. But with the lowly is wisdom. That's what we should maintain. Humility, meekness. All right. It says the integrity of the upright shall guide them, but the perverseness of transgressors shall destroy them. All right. The perverseness of transgressors shall destroy them. Verse 4, riches profit not in the day of wrath. So these jumbo jets are being gifted, this, billions of dollars that Trump is currently getting with this administration. It's not going to profit him in the day of judgment. All right? But righteousness delivereth from death. Right? As me and a brother were talking about earlier, the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life through Jesus Christ, our Lord, right? So we should follow his ways because that's what's going to deliver us from death. All right. It says the righteousness of the perfect shall direct his way, but the wicked shall fall by his own wickedness, right? You reap what you sow. All right. And we'll get into that a little bit later. All right. It says the righteousness of the upright shall deliver them, but transgressors shall be taken in their own naughtiness. But transgressors shall be taken in their own naughtiness. All right. But yeah, we'll come back to this. Man, all this is good, man. All this is good. But we'll come back to it. Because we got to talk about the war and how it's supposedly ending, right? It's supposedly ending. So it says, as Lebanon tests U.S.-Iran deal, Trump must rein in Netanyahu, analysts say. And that was kind of the whole thing. Trump... And I genuinely believe that Trump never really wanted to start this war in Iran anyway. Maybe he wanted to, kill Khomeini. Maybe. Honestly, I don't think he wanted to do any of that, right? But BB Milikowski's off in his ear saying, hey, we got to do this, we got to do that. We know we got you on tape doing this, that, and the third with your boy Epstein. You got to do this or that. Right? Most of the time, their interests do align, but there's that 5-10% of the time, like this whole Iran ordeal, that I think they, as it says, that Trump must rein in Netanyahu, right? And Netanyahu's had him by the cojones, right? It said Israel's invasion and attacks in Lebanon pose great vulnerability to U.S.-Iran diplomacy, says analyst Trita Parsi. And so that's kind of the whole thing, is that Iran wanted to rein in Israel. They said, look, we're not coming to peace because the true problem isn't even really America. It's the state of Israel. That's really the problem stirring things up over there. Now, of course, America has done a lot, but before this whole invasion of Iran, America wasn't really doing nothing but business over there. It was the state of Israel doing this, that, and the third. All right? So that's who Iran wants to rein in. It is not another anonymously sourced report about a rift between the U.S. and Israel. This time, the administration of President Donald Trump appears genuinely frustrated with Prime Minister Bibi Milikowski's war in Lebanon. So, if y'all are unaware, his dad changed their name from Milikowski to Netanyahu to make themselves sound more Israeli. All right, they're really from Poland, They are not Israelites. And Netanyahu means gift of God. I'm not calling him the gift of God because he is not. He's the devil. All right. So that's why I refer to him as his paternal name, right? Because his dad's name was Milikowski. I forget his dad's first name, but anyway. And his nickname is BB. I don't even want to call him Benjamin because that means son of the right, all right, or son of the right hand. The opening of the memorandum of understanding between the U.S. and Iran calls for the permanent termination of military operations on all fronts, including in Lebanon. But the Israelis are not stopping their attacks in the country. Of course not. They want their Greater Israel project, so why would they stop now? The Israeli military is continuing its deadly strikes in Lebanon and trying to advance further with its invasion, vowing to keep hold of the territory it has conquered, amounting to nearly 20% of the country. Right? Because this may be even a couple days old, but they were striking Beirut. Right? They were trying, and maybe even by now, successfully taking Beirut. The Trump administration is making it clear that it is irked by Israel's behavior. The U.S. is committed to peace, and we encourage everyone in the Middle East region to maintain their commitment to allowing our negotiations to beautifully unfold, Trump wrote in a social media post on Thursday. The markets are loving what is happening with oil prices way down and stocks way up. We expect a complete ceasefire on all fronts, including Lebanon, Hezbollah, and Israel. All right, so he specifically called them out and say, hey, look, stop fighting Hezbollah and Israel. For their part, the Iranians have said repeatedly that they will not finalize a ceasefire deal while Lebanon is under fire. This condition appeared to come into play on Friday when talks between the U.S. and Iran to discuss the technical terms of their ceasefire deal were postponed after overnight Israeli attacks on Lebanon killed dozens of people. Right, and that's the thing. The state of Israel is not stopping, though they may claim to. While U.S. officials have said that yet another ceasefire was agreed in Lebanon after the spike in violence on Friday, Israel has continued its attacks. Exactly. So they say that's what the state of Israel always does. They had said they said the same thing in Gaza, right? So I don't know what they did the same thing with Iran a couple times as well. So I don't know why you'd expect them to do any different in Lebanon. Supreme Leader Mojtaba Khamenei said on Thursday that he received assurances from President Mossad Pezeshkian? I know I messed that up. About safeguarding the rights of the Iranian nation and the resistance front in talks with the U.S. The resistance front, also known as the Axis of Resistance, is a network of regional Iranian allies that includes Hezbollah and Lebanon. Trita Parsi, Executive Vice President of the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft, said Tehran is not joking about its commitment to a ceasefire and Israeli withdrawal from Lebanon. Lebanon has always been the greatest vulnerability to this deal because this is really crucial to the Iranians, Parsi told Al Jazeera. Yeah, they want to stop the Greater Israel project from coming to fruition because they don't want to be neighbors with the state of Israel. So they'll hire or rather send funding. I don't necessarily say they're hired agents necessarily, but they will support Hezbollah, they will support Hamas, they'll support the Houthis, they'll support whoever they can to stop the Israeli offensive because they don't want to be neighbors with the state of Israel. When the MOU was announced, Israel's allies in the U.S. rushed to criticize the Lebanon stipulations, arguing that Israel must have freedom of military action to respond to threats in the country, as it says, threats. The deal stressed Lebanon's sovereignty and territorial integrity. The language would appear to mandate Israel end efforts to disarm Hezbollah, despite Israel not being a party to the MOU and ongoing Hezbollah attacks, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, AIPAC, said on Thursday. The thing is, the state of Israel is in Lebanon, right? It would be different if Lebanon or Hezbollah were within the state of Israel doing all this, right? But the state of Israel is on the offensive, right? They are within Lebanon. They have crossed, I forget the name of that river, but they were attacking Beirut. You know what I'm saying? They are clearly the ones who are aggressors in this conflict, Ryan Costello, the policy director at the National Iranian American Council, an advocacy group that promotes diplomacy, told Al Jazeera that Lebanon poses the greatest test for the ceasefire deal. I would not be surprised at all if there is a breakdown to the border negotiations and we see at least Israel and Iran return to fighting, Costello said. I think what Trump has signaled is that if you do that, Israel, you're going to be on your own. And yeah, they should be. I'm just saying that, like, and the thing is, like I said, it's not just the Epstein thing. It's the fact that, and it's actually pretty funny because I just heard, I think it was a quote from Farrakhan or whatever, talking about how, and I'll paraphrase because it isn't, I don't remember it exactly, and I don't even remember where it was sourced from, but America has to support the state of Israel because if they don't, then the world will begin to see what most people already know at this point, and that is that the true Israelites are not in the land right now. All right? If there is no state of Israel over there, then that was clearly a failed attempt by people claiming to be the children of God, but they're not really the children of God, right? The real children of God are scattered into every nation right now. All right? In the West, primarily the so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans. All right? But God's people are scattered all over the world. We read that in the scripture in Deuteronomy 28:64 says that God's people will be among all people, right? And it wouldn't, and we've read prophecy and learned the word, especially in the book of Ezekiel and in Jeremiah. We've covered both of those. We've covered both of those books, and there's consistent prophecies about the redemption and the deliverance of the children of Israel by God himself in the last days. And after the children of Israel are delivered and placed back into the land, then they will be completely righteous and there will be no sin amongst them, right? And you read in other prophets as well, but Isaiah is what's coming to mind specifically, that one of the prerequisites for being delivered and taken back to the land is righteousness. All right, he said only a righteous remnant would return, right? So to have the state of Israel, first of all, if you know prophecy, you know that those people in the land of Israel right now are not God's people because they are not righteous, right? So that means they can't be God's people, right? Even if you want to say that for some reason, they got delivered in their sin, it's been damn near 80 years since they went back to the land. When are they going to become righteous? Like God said he would give the people a new mind, a new heart, new spirit, right? When are they going to receive that? All right. Because when you read the prophecy, it's that they have become righteous first, then they get back to the land, and then God gives them that heart and that mind to serve him so that they can't sin anymore. All that is like back to back to back, right? It's not spaced out when you read the prophecy, right? So if the state of Israel experiment fails and the U.S. stops backing the state of Israel, then the U.S. has to answer questions as far as, okay, well, who are God's people, right? The state of Israel has to answer questions of like, okay, well, why did you steal this identity if you are not this people, all right? But anyway, it says Israel's assault on Lebanon has been a major fault line in the ceasefire for months. From the outset of the conflict, Iran has linked the war in Lebanon to its own confrontation with the U.S. and Israel. But Israel has insisted that it can attack Lebanon independently without affecting the broader ceasefire talks between the U.S. and Iran. Well, clearly not if that is one of the conditions upon which peace must be met. That's what Iran is saying. This is one of the conditions that has to be met. Then no, you can't just keep attacking them broadly, which is it's crazy that they even put it like this, right? Israel has insisted that it can attack Lebanon independently. Hey, us attacking them has nothing to do with you, right? Just kind of admitting fault there. Like, hey, we're on the offensive against them. That has nothing to do with our offensive against you, right? We can be the aggressors over here all we want to. Insane. Absolutely insane. When the U.S. and Israel launched their initial attacks on Iran in February, the war quickly mushroomed into a regional conflict. Naturally. The Lebanese group Hezbollah joined the fighting in March as a response to the killing of Iranian Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. as well as to Israel's daily violations of the ceasefire with Lebanon forged in November 2024. Yeah. Even last year, I was talking about how the state of Israel was encroaching further and further into Lebanon. Because they did I think that was last year. They did the whole pager thing in Lebanon last year. The whole cell phone thing, I'm pretty sure. The U.S. and Iran reached their initial ceasefire on April 8th, and announcing that deal, Pakistan, the lead mediator, said the ceasefire would apply to the entire region, including Lebanon. Right, so that's always been a prerequisite. That's always been one of the conditions. Is to say, hey, I remember one of the I don't remember when it was, but one of the earlier ceasefire agreements, Iran had claimed that, like, hey, look, y'all still attacking in Lebanon. What y'all doing that for? We said there's no more attacking, right? We said the everybody must be peaceful. And then J.D. Vance come out and said, well, hold on now, that wasn't part of the deal. And Iran's like, yeah, it was. And then the fighting continued. But Israel almost immediately said it would not abide by the agreement in Lebanon. Shocker. The Trump administration took the side of the Milošević government, with U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance warning Iran that it would be dumb to let the broader ceasefire collapse over Lebanon. Separately, Washington brokered direct talks between the Lebanese government and Israel, away from the diplomatic process mediated by Pakistan. Iran, however, has consistently maintained that Israeli attacks in Lebanon are a violation of the April 8th ceasefire. I guess that's the one I was making reference to. And it sprang into action, launching missiles at Israel when Beirut was bombed again earlier this month. Israel has destroyed entire towns in Lebanon, killed thousands of people, and displaced more than 1 million residents. After the recent MOU was reached, Tehran has reiterated its position, with the Iranian military saying that Israel should expect a harsh response if it continues to bomb Lebanon. This time, however, there is no U.S. maneuver. I guess that's like the British way of spelling maneuver. I don't know. To side with Israel in pushing decouple the fronts? Pushing to decouple the fronts? I don't know what they mean by that. Like kind of break down the fronts? I don't know. While the stipulations of the April ceasefire, just by context, just by context, it seems like, the U.S. is not going to side with Israel continuing to bomb Lebanon. Anyway, while the stipulations of the April ceasefire, including Lebanon's inclusion, were released by Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif on X, this time there is more than a social media post by a third party. The MOU signed by Trump and Pezeshkian is public, and stopping the war in Lebanon is stated prominently and explicitly in the document. On Thursday, Vance stressed that Israel has to respect the peace process with Iran. What the president is getting frustrated with sometimes is we seem to be right on the cusp of a major breakthrough in the agreement, and all of a sudden, a major explosion goes off in a civilian population center in Beirut, and a lot of people who have nothing to do with Hezbollah lose their lives, Vance told reporters. And I'm surprised he's going as mask off as he is right now, right? Because it seems like whenever Milošević here in the past couple of years has tried to do anything, against civilians, that Trump and Vance and the current administration trying to defend it, right? And say, well, they're attacking Hezbollah or they're attacking Hamas or whatever the case may be. But here they're just like, no, they're killing civilians, which everybody has known for a long time now. But it is what it is. Finally, since the Trump administration, Vance and Trump themselves probably pissed off at Milošević. They're just telling us straight up, hey, they're killing civilians. We can't support this. That's not acceptable. Finally, they admit that and they say that. U.S. leverage. Beyond words, analysts say the U.S. must use its leverage, including military and diplomatic support to Israel, to rein in Netanyahu and compel him to change his approach to Lebanon. In a message to critics of the Iran deal within the Israeli government, Vance alluded to that leverage on Thursday, reminding Israel that the U.S. is the superpower in the relationship. Right? And I've seen a lot this week of Bill Clinton whenever he met with Milikowski in the 90s. You know, he was real upset after that meeting because, you know, Milikowski was kind of pushing him around, saying, look, here's what you're going to do. You're going to support us. You're going to let us do this. You're going to blah, blah, blah. And Clinton was like, after the meeting, he was like, who does he think he is? Who's the effing superpower in this relationship, right? And apparently, it was Milikowski. Because, you know, the whole Epstein relationship that Clinton had, all right? But apparently Trump just don't care anymore because, you know, with the release of the Epstein files and whatnot, like he's just riding high. Ain't nobody took him down yet, so he just don't care anymore. What is your exact proposal? You're a country of 9 million people, and I should say the Epstein files haven't been fully released, nowhere near, but nobody's done anything about the drop that they have done, so I'm sure Trump just does not care at this point. What is your exact proposal? You're a country of 9 million people. You can't just kill your way out of solving every single national security problem that you have, the U.S. Vice President told the New York Times. So yeah, they're really pissed off. They're really pissed off with Milikowski. Parsi said Vance's statement reflects actual tensions between the U.S. and Israel, not the usual mild criticism by Washington that fails to affect policy. We have seen that the volume, the decibel, the aggressiveness of the American public message is now more or less at an unprecedented level, he told Al Jazeera. It shows that I think the paradigm of U.S.-Israeli relations is about to change, and that this is because Trump is looking at the agreement as part of his key legacy, and he is willing to fight for his legacy. Maybe. Maybe he is. He certainly wants to put his name on a bunch of things and make sure he's remembered. The executive vice president at the Center for International Policy also said that Trump appears increasingly aware that Milikowski may spoil the ceasefire with his campaign in Lebanon. That's a very real possibility. I would say that's more likely than not at this point. That the state of Israel just continues bulldozing its way into Lebanon and it kills this whole ceasefire deal. It's been clear for a while that Milikowski himself is one of the main sources of instability in the Middle East right now. The main source of instability in the Middle East right now. He's been the main reason why we couldn't get a ceasefire in Gaza and why it took so long to get a ceasefire with Iran, Duss told Al Jazeera. Who is Matthew Duss? Oh, the executive vice president at the Center for International Policy. Okay. So as always, the question is, okay, we know that there are differences of opinion between the president and the Israeli prime minister, but do we finally have an American president who's willing to put real pressure on Milikowski when he misbehaves? And that, I guess that is to be seen, right? That is, that's still, we still have to wait to see on that one, all right? So we see tensions between the state of Israel and the U.S. Now, this is something I've seen. It said the Pentagon chief's review appears out of step with what NATO allies are already doing, right? So here we have tensions between the U.S. and NATO, right? Which is mostly made up of EU, of the EU members. All right, it says hours after U.S. defense, and this is from Brussels, hours after U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth upbraided his NATO allies and announced a Pentagon review of their performance, the leaders of many European nations were assessing a checklist of progress made on security priorities. In essence, Hegseth was telling Europeans things they already know. The list included their hike in defense spending, investment in industry to boost the production of military equipment, best use of lessons learned from the war in Ukraine, and the need to buy or develop drones, air defense systems, and long-range weapons, right? So Hegseth coming out and saying, look, you can't depend on us for everything anymore, all right? And the EU's like, yeah, we got that. At a summit ending Friday, they mulled how to put joint EU funding to best use and cut red tape to speed purchases, weighed the state of military mobility to speed the deployment of troops and equipment and upgrade ports and airports. Europe's defense readiness must be decisively ramped up by 2030, they reaffirmed. The list was not new, rather something they have developed since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Intelligence agencies have warned that Russian President Vladimir Putin could order an attack elsewhere in Europe before the end of the decade, especially if he defeats Ukraine. Already, they accuse Russia of acts of sabotage and misinformation across Europe, which, yeah. Like every, and this is what kind of like the information that they leave out, that every major global player influences politics, not only in their region, but kind of in every facet, in every area that they can, right? So, of course, Putin would do the same thing, all right? As far as like sabotage, misinformation, every country that has their own news outlet will give their own version of that news, right? Will give their own. I'm not necessarily saying that they will completely lie about the facts. Sometimes they will, but oftentimes they will give their own spin on the facts, right? And that's kind of where you need to understand biases, right? And I've said this before, but I'll say it again. Even like the Al Jazeera, what I was just reading from, Qatari, that's them, that's Qatar. It's like the national Qatari news, basically. AP, I'm pretty sure that's an American business, but you know they're clearly like liberal leaning. Whenever you read AP, I forget. Well, actually, I haven't looked into who actually owns it, but that would kind of tell you more about the biases that you would read with the Associated Press. But just understand the biases whenever you read any kind of news, right? Because nothing is going to be completely objective. You may try to find some things that will be objective, but like every news outlet is going to have their own biases, and every author, every journalist, every editor also going to have their own biases, right? Like even if a journalist has their own particular biases, it may go through an editor who has a different set of biases, and you just got to understand that whenever you read the news, you're going to have. Some may call it misinformation. Some may call it propaganda. And there's an expression that I learned long ago is, like take the meat and leave the bones, right? And that's kind of what you have to do with everything you read, everything you watch, especially in this information age. About 2/3 of EU member countries also stand in NATO's ranks, and the added unpredictability of the Trump administration has only girded them to forge ahead alone. Hegseth's Pentagon review was just the latest surprise. And based on the rest of this article, I'm not even sure it was a surprise to them. This is kind of like the writing on the wall. They just didn't expect him to come in and make a big speech about it. Maybe they did. But you see here that NATO is trying to acquire their power back. Now I use that phrase specifically because of, I think it was last week, maybe the week before last, we read in the scriptures concerning the prophecy of these 10 horns, and I may just cover it again, just so we're clear on the prophecy, how it has unfolded and where we're at in it. It says Pentagon chief blasts U.S. allies. Hegseth does not attend many NATO meetings, and he left Thursday's gathering of defense ministers early. But his first major speech to the allies in February of 2025 and his follow-up this week were memorable. On Thursday, he berated NATO as a paper tiger. And it's funny you use that expression because people have used that expression concerning the U.S. military as well since this Iran war has developed. Said allies had been shameful and that too many failed a test put to them by President Donald Trump when he sought use of their bases in Europe to launch attacks on Iran. So Hegseth being like, "Oh, that was just a test." That's pretty funny. Oh, Trump was testing you and you failed whenever you wouldn't let us use your bases. He even took a shot at their focus on gender equity and climate change and slammed their migration policies. And of course, he'd have to make it like a real partisan thing. Not just his, him riding on behalf of Trump, but him talking about all the political talking points here. Anyway, Hegseth then gave them 6 months to shape up for a Pentagon performance review that tied the president's of U.S. forces in Europe and American investment in NATO to whether he believes they are pulling their weight. All right, so we may start to see real big changes, as it says in the next 6 months. We may start to see real big changes as far as the alliance between the U.S. and Europe. We may start to see major changes in the next 6 months. Its protection racket framing that undermines NATO solidarity, trust in the U.S. commitment to NATO, and ultimately U.S. security interests, said Rachel Elhus, Director General of the Royal United Services Institute think tank. Terms of the review are unknown. What the review really involves is not clear. It will be designed to ensure that NATO is moving fast and irreversibly toward Europe stepping up to take primary responsibility for the defense of Europe. Hegseth said some countries will fail and others will pass with flying colors. So the thing is, and again, this will be real interesting to see over the next 6 months or over the next 6 months to a year, I guess, because 6 months would actually lead to the end of 2026. It'll be really interesting to see in like 2027 where we stand, because according to the prophecy, we are just escalating toward this World War III, and I'll read that Revelation 17 again so y'all can see how Europe plays and all that. But it'll be really interesting to see if these countries that he said will pass with flying colors. I'm sure that by that, and even with Brexit, I think they're still a part of NATO. I don't think they left NATO. I think they left EU specifically. But I'm thinking he means that like Britain and France perhaps will pass with flying colors. I'm interested. What I think will be really interesting to see is if some of these other countries don't pass the test, so to speak, but all NATO kind of remains together and allied, and say it doesn't, and like Britain and France step up and be like, hey, it doesn't matter if they pass, we're on their side, we're not on your side, right? So if this is the rift between the U.S. and NATO that the prophecy speaks of, and I'll get into that here shortly in Revelation 17. Like I said, I read it, I think it was last week, could have been week before last, but I'll reiterate just so y'all can be with me on that. Y'all know and understand what I'm talking about. What the review really involves is not clear. It says some countries will fail and others will pass with flying colors. It might last up to 6 months, could be less, he said, and involve U.S. military commanders, members of Congress, and the allies themselves. Right? So maybe it won't take till 2027. Maybe it'll be before then. He said that U.S. payments into a joint NATO budget that runs its headquarters and other facilities will depend on how they're doing. Where other allies do not spend with urgency, our dues contributions will go down, Hegseth said. Talking to reporters at Brussels airport before flying out, he said it would also address where is the right place for basing. Where can we make sure we have access and overflight when we need it? So that America is properly postured on the continent, right? So Hegseth is not even saying, any kind of military bases. We're not removing any kind of military bases. We may be moving them, but we're maintaining hegemony over the continent. Again, if this causes the rift between NATO and the U.S., Europe may just be like, hey, we don't want your bases here anymore. I doubt it, but it may say that. NATO played no active role in the Iran war, but did shield alliance territory from possible attack. And that was kind of the thing that Trump and Hegseth kind of expected, is that Europe would support the war in Iran, but they didn't. Right? And that's kind of his whole pissy attitude about it here. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte could shed no light on what Hegseth's review might entail. There is still no clarity on exactly what the outcome will be, because that will depend on the review. So we'll see what happens, Rutte said. I'll say Rutte. Said, adding that wherever we can be helpful, we will be helpful. Rutte might learn more when he travels to Washington next week. The numbers show U.S. allies doing quite well. As far as Rutte's concerned, European allies and Canada are doing well, although they could always do more. What we are seeing is staggering amounts of money coming in, he told reporters. Europe and Canada are spending in 2025 more than $90 billion extra compared to 2024, which is almost a 20% increase in defense spending. The extra money must now be converted into more military equipment, weapons, and ammunition. At their summit last year, the Allies agreed to boost their military budgets to match that of the U.S. in terms of gross domestic product. Trump left the meeting a happy man, calling his NATO counterparts a nice group of people, but the review does not augur well for their next summit in Turkey on July 7th through the 8th. Still, top European military officers now hold more command roles at NATO, and U.S. allies have taken charge of funneling arms and money into Ukraine as the Trump administration has stepped back. Interesting. So again, they're becoming more self-sufficient. It's going to get to the point, and maybe even within the next year or so, them saying, hey, look, we don't need you anymore. We don't need the U.S. anymore. Some Europeans and Canada are also spending billions to buy vital air defense systems from the U.S. that they donate to Ukraine, whose war with Russia they see as an existential threat to Europe. Indeed, it's hard to see what more could be done and faster, except perhaps to provide unfettered access to their airspace and bases on their territory for America to wage its wars elsewhere. Elhus, a former top U.S. advisor at NATO, said that force positioning should be driven by detailed threat assessments, operational requirements, and military planning, not used as a form of reward, punishment, or revenge. Such framing undermines allies while they're actively trying to solve the problem, and telegraphs to adversaries that the U.S. security commitments have a price tag, she said. So, I'll go ahead and get this in Revelation 17 just to show y'all what I was talking about, and then I'll kind of get into like the broader point. Let me get this here in Revelation 17 just to show y'all what I was talking about. As far as the prophecy is concerned, NATO's role to play in the coming conflict. All right, because it may initially start as a U.S. ally, maybe, but really, it's certainly not going to end that way. Let me get this here in Revelation 17. I'll skip around a little bit. Just kind of getting to the point. Again, I covered all this. It may have been last week. Could have been the week before, though. When I don't even remember what we was talking about necessarily, but I remember we was talking about NATO and the agreement with the U.S. and whatnot. But anyway, here in Revelation 17, verse 5, it says, and upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. Right, so this is the woman. It's talking about here, riding a scarlet-colored beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. All right, so I'm going to jump down to verse 12. This is the point about NATO. And the 10 horns, which thou sawest, are 10 kings, a.k.a. 10 kingdoms. All right? When you read like Daniel 7, for example, the word king and kingdom are used interchangeably. All right? Which have received no kingdom as yet, but received power as kings 1 hour with the beast. Right? So they it says they have received no kingdom as yet, because at that time, the 10 common markets were not a thing yet. All right? But rather that happened in the 20th century. All right? These have one mind, right? They're in agreement with one another. They have a league together, NATO, right? And shall give their power and strength unto the beast, right? So they give it over to America, all right? They give their strength and their power to the beast, all right? These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful, right? So these are the people, these different, originally started out as European colonial empires, but what that led to was the U.S. and NATO. This conglomerate, this alliance here in the last days have made war spiritually with, as it says, the called and chosen and faithful, right? And when you read, I want to say it's Matthew 25, right? It talks about if you do it to one of these, one of the least of my brethren, you do it to me, right? That's what Christ had told his followers. He said, look, if you help out the least of his brethren, you help him out. If you don't help out the least of his brethren, you don't help him out, right? So anything you do to Christ's followers, you do it to him, all right? But it says the Lamb shall overcome them, right? When he returns, he will bring judgment to the earth, all right? And he saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest where the horse sitteth are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues, right? So that would be the American military bases all over the world, the American embassies all over the world, all right? And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, right? So that's the prophecy, that these 10 horns, which the 10 common markets, the EU, NATO, right, these European alliances, will hate America, will end up hating America, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire, right? And I talked about how France is I think it's the fourth country with the most nukes, all right? France is a part of this, all right? And like I said, I think that Great Britain is still part of NATO, even though they're not part of the EU technically, with the Brexit and all that happened about a decade ago, all right? But they got nukes as well. Guess where their nukes is going? Right here in America. For God hath put in their hearts to fulfill his will and to agree and to give their kingdom unto the beast until the words of God shall be fulfilled, right? And earlier it talks about how it keeps calling America the beast, right? Because for example, in Revelation 13, it talks about 2 beasts, right? The one being the same described as the scarlet colored beast that the woman is riding, but also the second one being the 2-horned beast that come up later, right? And that one describes America, but also here, what does it say? Into the 8th, the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7, and goeth into perdition, right? So it describes this woman as being the 8th beast as well, all right? So, because you had the 7 beasts, they had 10 horns. What comes after is the 8th beast, the woman, right? The daughter of Babylon, as you read in Isaiah 47. As it says here in verse 18, and the woman which thou sawest is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth, right? So oftentimes when you read the articles, like on Al Jazeera, for example, they will say Washington, when really in reference to all of America, right? So like you could say this great city is like Washington, D.C., right? That's the great city which reigned over the kings of the earth, all right? But of course, that's just representative of all of America. All right, so let's get this here in 2 Ezra 11. Because again, this is something we've talked about, but to the broader point of America kind of isolating itself from its allies, right? Because at this point, the only allies that America really has is NATO and the state of Israel, right? With the state of Israel going crazy, just trying to fulfill their Greater Israel project of bombing and destroying everybody, while the U.S. is trying to make peace with Iran, that's separating the U.S. from the state of Israel, right? And, Hegseth going off and berating NATO, right? That's separating them from NATO, right? But I'll read this here in 2 Ezra 11 and 40, and I'll read on down, because really this beast that's in Daniel 7, and this is the continuation of that prophecy, the beast that's in Daniel 7 starts off as Rome, but Rome ended up being shut down by Israelites in 193 AD, it literally fell. It literally was burned in like the 4th century or whatever. Capital was moved to Constantinople, now Istanbul. But Rome ended up falling, especially the Edomite rulership in Rome fell in the 2nd century And the Edomites didn't come back into power until about 1453 AD, right? The fall of Constantinople. That's when it became Istanbul. But then these European colonial empires came about, and off the back of these European colonial empires is what I just described, the alliance between America and NATO, right? This is the end result of Esau in power, right? And that's kind of what we're talking about here. And the fourth came and overcame all the beasts that were past and had power over the world with great fearfulness, and over the whole compass of the earth with much wicked oppression. And so long time dwelt he upon the earth with deceit, right? So for centuries, Esau has been ruling over the earth, 1453? Up until, we're almost 600 years into that now, right? With, different empires, different kingdoms have come and gone, but it's all been like the end of Esau, right? It says, and so long time dwelt he upon the earth with deceit. Now, I will say 1453 is not like when they come back into power. They didn't really start coming back into power until 1492, right? That was kind of the time when they come back into power. 1453 is just when Constantinople fell, when the Byzantine Empire fell. It was the beginning of the end for Israelites in rulership. But anyway, it says, for the earth hast thou not judged with truth, and that goes back to the false balance, the deceit. All right. For thou hast afflicted the meek, thou hast hurt the peaceable, thou hast loved liars, right? Like the state of Israel. Even Christ said he knows those that are of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews, but are not, and do lie, right? They have loved liars. They have supported this lie that is God's people, all right? And destroyed the dwellings of them that brought forth fruit, and has cast down the walls of such as did thee no harm, right? And that's what we have seen over the 20th century, specifically over the 1900s. The U.S. sent CIA into all these different countries, including Iran, but mostly Latin American countries, and just like toppled their governments. All right, even though these Latin American countries did nothing to the U.S., they still went in there and toppled their governments for different business reasons. All right. Therefore, is thy wrongful dealing come up unto the highest, and thy pride unto the mighty. Right. Remember what we read about pride in Proverbs 11. Before pride, what does it say about pride? Out of pride cometh shame. When pride cometh, then cometh shame. All right. So, excuse me, where are we at? There we go. All right. The highest also had looked upon the proud times, and behold, they are ended, and his abominations are fulfilled. All right, we're getting to that point where the sins of this place are reaching up unto heaven. All right. We have all the different people of the Lord waking up, all the different tribes waking up, calling upon the Most High, say, hey, bring judgment and justice to the earth. All right. And the Lord is he's calling it all to a close. All right. The ways of this world, he's bringing it all to an end. All right. And therefore appear no more, thou eagle, nor thy horrible wings, nor thy wicked feathers, nor thy malicious heads, nor thy hurtful claws, nor all thy vain body, that all the earth may be refreshed and may return, being delivered from thy violence, that she may hope for the judgment and mercy of him that made her. You see that right there? So that all the earth may be refreshed. Right? And that's kind of what I wanted to get to here in Proverbs 11. Where I'll start back with verse 6, and then I'll skip around a little bit. The righteousness of the upright shall deliver them, but transgressors shall be taken in their own naughtiness. This is Proverbs 11. It says, when a wicked man dieth, his expectation shall perish, and the hope of unjust men perisheth. The righteous is delivered out of trouble, and the wicked cometh in his stead. You see that right there? So the wicked goes into trouble instead of the righteous. All right? So I'm going to jump down. Well, actually, verse 10, I really like. I'll read 9 just to get to 10. And hypocrite with his mouth destroyeth his neighbor, but through knowledge shall the just be delivered. Right? So just as an example, these different Of course, the Republicans are in power now, but it was the Democrats. But it doesn't really matter because both sides have made these statements about Black and Latino people. They say, oh, they're violent. They say, oh, look at these immigrants causing all this violence, all this rape, all this murder. They say the same thing about so-called Black people, right? Back in the 90s, you had Hillary Clinton come on TV saying these kids are super predators, right? But when you look at what's been going on, look at the state of Israel, who America has supported. All right, these people are the rapists. They rape men in prison. They rape women when they capture them. Right? Look at the murders that they've caused, the killing of children. These are the real super predators. So this is the hypocrisy. All right, this is just straight up hypocrisy. All right, it says, "But through knowledge shall the just be delivered." Right? The knowledge of the commandments of the Lord is the doctrine of life. All right. Verse 10, it says, when it goeth well with the righteous, the city rejoiceth. And when the wicked perish, there is shouting. All right. So there will be a rejoicing, a shout for joy when the wicked perish. Understand that thing. And everybody will rejoice when the righteous are in rulership. All right. You read that in, I think it's Romans 8, talks about the creature. Wait for the manifestation of the children of God. All right. By the blessing of the upright, the city is exalted, but it is overthrown by the mouth of the wicked. Right. So again, it's all been leading up to this, but Trump and his administration are just the embodiment of it, just the personification, the escalation of it right here at the end, of how America is going to be overthrown. All right. Let's see. I'm going to jump down to, where are we at? I guess I'll start with 18. It says, the wicked worketh a deceitful work, but to him that soweth righteousness shall be a sure reward. So this chapter starts going into, and I guess you could say the whole thing was about this, but it starts going into how you reap what you sow. Right, and I'll make sure to get that before we close out. But it says, him that soweth righteousness shall be a sure reward. As righteousness tendeth to life, so he that pursueth evil pursueth it to his own death. You see that right there? So we serve a God that is a just God, a God who knows and does judgment, right? He is a righteous judge. He is the judge of all. All right. All the wickedness and the evil that America has done in the earth, right? I mention all the time about what they've done to Latin America over the 20th century, even on up to today. All right. You talk about the founding of this country on the backs of genocide and slavery, right? The genocide of the so-called natives and the slavery of the so-called blacks, right? All this evil that America has done, at home and abroad, right? It has to come back. If we serve a just God, there has to be judgment for it. There's not just, oh, well, that was back then and that doesn't apply now. Of course it does, all right? You can't have a foundation of blood and expect that house to stand. It just does not work that way, all right? It does not work that way. So it says, he that pursueth evil pursueth it to his own death. It would be one thing. If, you had the genocide of the Native Americans and then the slavery of the so-called African Americans, right? Israel and Judah being oppressed together. And then America had the Civil War and it was all bloody, the bloodiest war ever, as they like to claim it is. The bloodiest war ever. And, that's it. And then America was just righteous from then on out. But we know that's not what happened. We know that's not how it happened. From there, after the Civil War, you had the continuous expansion of the American empire. Like I said, all the evil that was done in the 20th century, here and abroad, right? In Latin American countries and here in America with the Jim Crow laws, right? And even since then, since 1948, they've been funding Israel, the state of Israel, doing all sorts of murder and wicked over there in the Middle East too. Right? So all this evil that has been pursued, it's got to be to the death of this place. It's got to. All right? And people may get riled up about me saying something like that, but I ain't got to do anything. I'm just reading the scriptures, right? I'm just showing the word. The Most High will make sure this comes to pass. I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to seek peace, right? Because that's what the scriptures say to do, all right? They that are of a froward heart are abomination to the Lord, right? So if you're contrary to what he says and does, then you're abomination to him. But such as are upright in their way are his delight. God is he's filled with joy over people who are upright, over people that do righteousness, all right? It says, though hand join in hand, the wicked shall not be unpunished. Right? And hand join in hand, and we think of that as like, or at least it has been taught, as in like hand in hand, like kumbaya, we are the children. You know what I'm saying? Like we are the world. You know what I mean? But also like business agreements, right? Or handshakes, right? It doesn't matter what kind of business agreement you make, you will not be unpunished. But the seed of the righteous shall be delivered. All right? And we are running a bit long, so I'll go ahead and read this, and then we'll close it out. In Galatians, not Colossians. Y'all bear with me 1 second. I clicked on the wrong thing. In Galatians 6 and verse 7, I believe it is, about you reap what you sow. All right, and there's plenty more scriptures that I had in mind, but those articles did take a while. And I didn't mean to spend as much time as I did on Juneteenth. I just didn't even plan for that. That's just something that's been on my spirit for not that long, but like a couple days or whatever. Galatians 6 and verse 7. It says, I'll read 7 and 8. It says, be not deceived. God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. For he that soweth to his flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption, meaning decay or death. But he that soweth to the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap life everlasting. Right? So God is not mocked. He is the judge of all things. Right? You read Ecclesiastes 12. It says he's going to bring every work into judgment, whether it be good or evil. All right, so keep the commandments. That's the whole duty of man. All right. But whatever you sow, you're going to reap. If you've sown genocide and captivity, as it says in Revelation 13, it said, he that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. If that's what you've sown, you got to reap that. All right. But if you've sown to the Spirit, if you've kept the commandments of God, if you've kept his word, if you kept his words above all else, all right, then you will reap life everlasting. All right. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and close it out with the benediction. All right. What many call the benediction, the memorial, as that's what Christ called it. The memorial for the sister Mary. John, names are in John 12. Who did this wonderful thing for our Lord. All right. But I tend to stick to Matthew 26 and Mark 14 because it actually says to keep the memorial here. So it's all contained in one passage. Now when Jesus was in Bethany in the house of Simon the leper, there came unto him a woman having an alabaster box of very precious ointment and poured it on his head as he sat at meat. But when his disciples saw it, they had indignation, saying, to what purpose is this waste? For this ointment might have been sold for much and given to the poor. When Jesus understood it, he said unto them, why trouble ye the woman? For she hath wrought a good work upon me. For ye have the poor always with you, but me ye have not always. For in that she had poured this ointment on my body, she did it for my burial. Verily I say unto you, wheresoever this gospel shall be preached in the whole world, there shall also this that this woman have done be told for a memorial of her. So with that, hope y'all learned something. I'm going to say shalom. Happy Sabbath, and let God be magnified.